Chair, and thank you all for coming this morning, and my apologies for just arriving in now and firing questions at you that probably have already been asked, but if they have, would you indulge me and give me some brief answers to them, please? The first question I have is in the context of our rise in emissions, and we know that they shot up by 12% in the final months of last year, and the complete opposite to most of the rest of the European countries. We are an outlier among the 27 member states, with emissions heading absolutely in the wrong direction. So in listening to this discussion and taking into account all the planning and development of offshore wind, very important, that's the way to go, etc. But my question to you is, and I know you may say commercial sensitivity and all the rest of it, but is there a coherent integrated plan for what companies go into what port, or are you competing against each other? In that sense, is it a mishmash of who gets to grab what company of the ones that have been given licences and that may organise offshore wind and commercially organise it? Because it's not a national state-owned enterprise, it's therefore could be a mishmash of different companies and different ports. And I'd like to ask about that, any joined-up thinking, any rational joined-up thinking about who goes where and when and how. Or is it a case that each port is competing with the other? Because I don't think that that's helpful either for transport or for our emissions or for our plan to the future. My second question is on the question of LNGs and liquefied natural gas terminals. The Sunday Business Post recently reported that the Port of Cork has signed a heads of agreement with a US firm to explore the possibility of setting up a floating liquefied natural gas facility in Cork Harbour. Now, the answer may be, but it's not what I want to hear, that that's not fracked gas, it's just other kinds of gas. But whether it's fracked or not, I think we need to take account of what the IPCC and the International Energy Agency are saying exactly on that there can be no new fossil fuel infrastructure in any country if we are to really deal with the catastrophe that's facing us. And after all, that's what this committee is all about. So as well as asking about the Port of Cork, can each of you address whether you would allow or welcome or in discussion with any LNG company about terminals like this on your sites? And do you think it's compatible with our just transition targets, with our targets to reduce emissions? So they're my two questions. Thanks for, I suppose, putting up with me.
Thanks, Debbie Smith. Who wants to go first? Mr. Murphy, go ahead.
Okay, I'll answer the first one there. Look, regard to the LNG in Port of Cork, we obviously, our paymasters are the government, right? And we are waiting that energy security document to be issued by the government. On the back of that, whatever the government decides, we'll take that steer. But as a commercial state company, we are, I suppose, mandated and obliged to have enough port capacity to meet the demand, right? So we look at what the demand in the market is, but it's up to government to decide who are our paymasters, where that goes. Ultimately.
But is the Sunday Business Post right that you have signed the heads of agreement with the US firm?
I believe there's an MOU in place with the company. That's all. I don't heads of terms. I'm not sure it's gone that far.
Sorry, say that again.
There's a memorandum of understanding signed,
okay.
I believe.
It's not the heads of an agreement, it's an MOU.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, and the rest of the ports, would you welcome an LNG? Has there been discussions like in Foynes or anywhere else?
Well, obviously there is an LNG terminal gone through the planning process at Ballylongford, which I believe is with on board Panola at the moment. That's the project that was previously consented to. And is as I said, currently again within the planning process. So I suppose from our point of view, it's you know, our role in that is as a port authority is ensuring that we can, you know, oversee, if you like, the traffic to and from the terminal. And you know, we've been part of that planning process initially. From a maritime navigation safety point of view. So we have looked at, I suppose, at it from that aspect. And, you know, that aspect was positive. But we are not the arbitrators of whether that project goes ahead or not. And as I said, that's within the planning system. As regards the coordination for ORE amongst the ports, you know, there is, as I said, there was the policy statement that Minister Ryan launched in December 21. And then some of this is based on, I suppose, natural positioning as well. So, for example, there's different types of port infrastructure required. You have marshalling port, which is potentially for the construction phase, and then you have the O&M facilities as well. The marshalling port stage requires deep water ports to assist in the construction of the actual wind farm devices to be towed offshore. So, you know, if you don't have deep water port assets or deep water within your harbour, you also need significant, for floating, you need significant what they call wet storage areas. So there's kind of some natural advantages as well as the proximity then to the resources offshore where those farms are deemed to go. So I think, look, the policy is evolving around it, and we kind of mentioned about DMAPs and MARA and MAX and all of that. And I suppose a lot of the purpose there is to ensure that, you know, the sites chosen are, you know, from an environmental, and this all has to be sustainable environment development, I suppose, that, you know, that those tests are carried out through those processes, again, through, particularly through, you know, under the, I suppose, the planning process at this stage, which will do most of the environmental investigative type work for offshore now as well under the new MAP Act. So, look, I believe there is a pretty coordinated approach to that, and, you know, we have a DMAP consultation ongoing currently. So I think, you know, obviously the sustainable development of port infrastructure and of these wind farms is top of the agenda. But, you know, ports are in sensitive environmental areas as well. And I suppose we're all, as ports, certainly very conscious of that. So from our point of view, it's again working with the policy you know, and we have to obviously as ports comply with that policy, and we will comply with that policy.
So does your answer then, sorry for trying to be quite specific about this, imply that your answer to me is that there isn't competition between the ports, that you have a coordinated, joined up thinking on a national level about who goes where?
No, well, it's ultimately our customers will decide who goes where.
Not the state, not the port authorities?
No, we try to determine that they'll come to us by offering efficient services and good infrastructure fit for purpose. That's under the framework of, I suppose, the company law structure that we've been established under.
So therefore you are competing with each other for...
We do compete against each other.
Instead of joining it up and deciding, coordinating who goes where. Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks very much.